You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Howard Stern rose to fame by flipping the media world on its head, fueling his empire with shock value, defiance, and a relentless assault on the establishment. But when Greg Gutfeld, never one to pull punches, set his sights on the so-called king of controversy, something unexpected happened. Silence, no witty retort, no biting comeback. Just a tense, uneasy quiet that said more than words ever could. Online television, Gutfeld didn't just challenge Stern's transformation, he exposed it. The rebel, once untouchable, had morphed into the very thing he once mocked. And Gutfeld, he didn't just call it out, he set it ablaze.
That's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine. Or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Some TV moments fade into static, forgettable, fleeting. And then there are the ones that crash into pop culture like a meteor, blazing, explosive, and impossible to unsee. The live showdown between Greg Gutfeld and Howard Stern wasn't just another media spat, it was a full-on cultural supernova. What unfolded wasn't merely a clash of egos, it was a head-on collision between two media titans from entirely different worlds. One fueled by old-school shock-jock rebellion, the other armed with sharp wit and a taste for irony. And when the dust settled, only one still looked like he had a seat among the stars. Howard Stern, once the untouchable king of all media, suddenly looked very terrestrial.
It's incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
Now back to the man who redefined what it meant to be outrageous on air. Once a fearless pioneer of shock radio, Howard Stern didn't just push boundaries, he bulldozed through them. He built an empire by saying the unsayable, daring the untouchable, and turning taboo into primetime entertainment. Stern wasn't just a voice, he was a cultural earthquake, shaking up the polished world of polite conversation. Love him or loathe him, one thing was certain, you noticed him. But here's the thing about being the rebel king. Stay on the throne too long, and the crown starts to feel a little too comfortable. Over time, the once razor-sharp edge of Stern's persona has softened, morphing into something unexpected. A transformation that's left fans and critics alike raising eyebrows.
I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, you know, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Like a lot of diarrhea.
From the unfiltered voice of rebellion to a measured, soft-spoken celebrity confidant, Howard Stern's transformation has been nothing short of dramatic. Once the unpredictable outsider who threw Molotov cocktails at mainstream culture, he now sips lats with A-listers and trades barbs for compliments. The wild man of radio has slowly evolved into something resembling a refined talk show host, a shift that hasn't gone unnoticed. And that's exactly where Greg Gutfeld saw his opportunity. For all his polarizing opinions, Gutfeld has carved out a niche as a provocateur in prime time. Equal parts political sniper, late-night court jester, and cultural wrecking ball, he doesn't just spar, he strategizes. He satirizes. He surgically dismantles personas with the precision of someone who knows exactly where to land the punch. His nightly show is a blend of mockery and incite, sparing no one he deems hypocritical or overhyped. So when Stern casually entered Gutfeld's crosshairs, it wasn't by accident. What started as a passing jab quickly escalated into a deliberate, calculated takedown. Gutfeld didn't merely question Stern's shift, he exposed it. Layer by layer, he peeled back the image of the rebellious icon turned penthouse philosopher, spotlighting what he saw as the ultimate sellout. A former disruptor now preaching decorum from behind studio glass.
Radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, dude.
Let's be clear, this wasn't some casual, throwaway jab. Greg Gutfeld didn't just take a swipe at Howard Stern. He zeroed in and went for the legacy. With the precision of a sniper and the calm resolve of someone who's been waiting for this moment, Gutfeld reframed Stern not as a legend, but as a cautionary tale. The message rang loud, even without volume. Howard Stern, once the fearless, flag-throwing renegade of radio, had become the very thing he once torched with glee. And in Gutfeld's universe, that's the ultimate betrayal. Selling out, softening, becoming a cog in the same machine you were once hell-bent on blowing up. No yelling, no theatrics, just a sharp, controlled takedown, like a surgeon with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Gutfeld laid out a stark comparison. The old Stern, wild, unpredictable, anti-establishment to the core, versus the new Stern, impeccably manicured, cozying up to celebrities he once dismantled on air. It was a quiet evisceration. A surgical unmasking of a man who built his empire by ridiculing hypocrisy, now sipping champagne with the very elite he used to mock. Gutfeld didn't have to embellish. He simply held up the mirror. And in that reflection, the irony did all the talking. The shock jock who once spit on the red carpet now seemed all too comfortable walking it.
Holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things, like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated. F them, f their freedom.
This was the same guy who once wore defiance like a second skin, who built a career flipping off the establishment with both hands. Now, Howard Stern seemed fixated on something very different. Approval. Hollywood's approval. Corporate approval. The polished knot of mainstream culture he once swore to dismantle. And what made Greg Gutfeld's shot land with such force wasn't just the jab, it was the context. Gutfeld's show lives off irreverence. It's not just comedy, it's combat. He doesn't just poke fun. He slaughters sacred cows, grinds them into satire, and serves them rare. So when he locked onto Stern, it wasn't a petty celebrity spat. It felt like a generational reckoning. One iconoclast staring down another, accusing him of abandoning the mission. The blow wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was quiet, clinical, and philosophical, an accusation that Stern hadn't just changed, he'd surrendered. And what followed was even more shocking. No retort, no rant, no fiery comeback. Just silence. The kind that doesn't just echo, it confirms. For once Stern, once the master of the takedown, was the one being dissected, and the cut ran deep. Gutfeld framed him not as a man who evolved, but as a rebel who'd been slowly seduced by the very system he once mocked. Viewers didn't just hear it, they felt it. The sting of watching a once thunderous voice dim into polite irrelevance. The contrast couldn't have been more brutal or more believable.
Watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you. I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that, Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Stern built his empire during an era when rebellion came at a cost. Back then, pushing the envelope meant FCC fines, network bans, and furious sponsors threatening to pull the plug. But it was that friction, the resistance, that made him a legend. He thrived on the backlash, turning controversy into currency and becoming a cultural juggernaut in the process. Gutfeld, by contrast, was forged in a different fire. His battleground isn't the radio waves, it's the algorithm. He rose in a world where cancel culture, outrage mobs, and weaponized tweets replaced warning letters and corporate phone calls. Swear words gave way to sarcasm. Shock jockery became satire. So when Gutfeld and Stern clashed, it wasn't just a celebrity squabble, it was a head-on collision between two eras of media rebellion. Gutfeld personifies the new age, fast, clever, meme-ready, built for virality. And the audience? They watched like it was a high-stakes trial. No judge, no rules, just two cultural titans vying for dominance in real time. But what made Gutfeld's strike so devastating wasn't aggression, it was admiration. He didn't mock Stern's past, he honored it. And, by doing so, he exposed the gap between who Stern was and who he's become.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy, David McDowell, Pat Tim, and Janine Garofalo. All right. A long way for a meat joke. Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited.
The version of Howard Stern that showed up on satellite radio in a designer hoodie, smiling politely on late-night talk shows, and chatting breezily with Hollywood royalty was almost unrecognizable. And Gutfeld made sure to point that out. The old Stern, the one who tore into phonies and eviscerated celebrity pretense with surgical cruelty, would have scorched this polished version of himself without hesitation. To Gutfeld, this wasn't evolution, it was capitulation. Stern had gone from cultural sniper to a kind of media monk, muzzled, manicured, and oddly zen with the very institutions he once torched with glee. No longer the explosive outsider, he now resembled the gatekeepers he used to ridicule. The fallout was fast and fierce. Social media ignited, not from outrage, but from recognition. Clips, comments, duets, think pieces. Gutfeld hadn't delivered a rant. He'd struck a nerve. He voiced what countless disillusioned fans had been whispering for years. What happened to the Howard we used to know? It wasn't just a personal critique, it was a cultural provocation. Can a rebel stay a rebel forever? Or does every icon eventually trade in their flame for comfort, applause, and a seat at the table they once flipped?
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
Is it inevitable that every firebrand eventually becomes part of the very system they once swore to destroy? Or worse, do they start defending that system once they've secured their seat at the table? That was the quiet accusation simmering beneath Greg Gutfeld's commentary. He didn't attack Stern for evolving. He questioned how the evolution happened. Not through conviction or personal growth, but through what appeared to be strategic, calculated self-preservation. The once fearless provocateur who proudly declared he feared nothing now seemed paralyzed by the idea of offending anyone. The same man who mocked celebrity vanity now seemed consumed by a desire to be embraced by the glitterati he used to lampoon. And then came the silence. Stern, once the undisputed king of the clapback, a verbal street fighter who could flatten critics in seconds, said nothing. No rebuttal. No spark. No fight. Just disappearance. And that silence spoke louder than any defense could have. Whether fair or not, the impression was haunting that Gutfeld had hit a nerve. That Stern, long the master of confrontation, might have finally run out of ammo. Or worse, that he quietly recognized the truth in the takedown and chose not to deny it.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this set, because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes in your mansion.
Viewers who once revered Howard Stern for his firebrand energy and fearless honesty were now left squinting through the smoke, asking, where did that edge go? It wasn't just that he didn't respond to Gutfeld, it was that he couldn't. Gutfeld lobbed a precision strike, and Stern didn't flinch, not with swagger, but with what looked unsettlingly like hesitation. In an industry built on instant reactions and narrative control, Stern's silence wasn't just a missed moment. It felt like quiet confirmation, the kind that echoes louder than any rant. Meanwhile, Gutfeld carried on, cool, composed, and almost smug, like a man who knew he'd struck gold. There was no need for a victory lap. The internet did it for him. Comments poured in. Memes exploded. YouTube reaction videos stacked up like digital applause. Gutfeld's critique wasn't just heard, it was felt, and more importantly, it resonated. But this wasn't some cheap jab at a passing celebrity. That's what made it sting. Gutfeld aimed at a man who defined the art of tearing others down. Stern had built an empire exposing hypocrisy, mocking ego, and peeling back the masks of the elite. Now, he was the one wearing the mask. And that's the cruel irony of being a legend. Your greatest threat isn't your critics. It's your own legacy. When the present version of you can't live up to the past, your former fans won't just notice. They'll turn on you with the same scrutiny you once reserved for everyone else.
I always hate that argument, like, what happened to the old Stern, or what people have changed. That's not what this is about. It's a weird disconnect.
Well, he hasn't changed.
No.
People have been calling him insane for 40 years.
Yeah.
That just used to be, this guy's nuts. And now they're like, oh, we're worried about Howard. He needs help. But I'll tell you, though, I'm a little sympathetic because what you said is correct, but I'm also a germaphobe.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just have a smaller apartment.
Yes.
The entire moment, whether intentional or not, played out like a searing critique of the media landscape itself. A mirror held up not just to Howard Stern, but to an entire industry quietly eroding under the weight of its own contradictions. Gutfeld's rise wasn't a fluke. It was forged in the exact flames that Stern once stoked: raw, unfiltered defiance, a rejection of pre-approved narratives, and a refusal to play nice. The very energy Stern once weaponized against polite society, Gutfeld now channels in an era that's starving for authenticity. Legacy media, bogged down by performative sensitivity and endless layers of corporate approval, often feels like it's lost the plot. And in that void, Gutfeld didn't just step in, he kicked the door down. He says what others won't, sometimes to a fault, but always with the confidence of someone who doesn't ask for permission. That used to be Stern's lane. Now, while Stern leans into safe interviews, predictable praise, and the comfortable embrace of celebrity culture, Gutfeld barrels ahead, reckless, polarizing, but undeniably real to his audience. This wasn't just a media clash, it was a generational handoff. A moment where authenticity, or at least the performance of it, won the spotlight. Stern, once the guy who called everyone out, suddenly looked like someone trying to protect a legacy that no longer reflected the man himself.